Why is NSBM so notoriously good? Good quality-wise, but also good at attracting a wide array of people that don't agree with its messaging whatsoever. Why do non-agreeers get attracted to it so much? What exactly is the history of a lot of NSBM bands, and how do we get to the point to where, like a fucking Scooby-Doo mystery, people go out of their way to try to investigate if something is NS or not? It's time to rip the cap off that and try to figure out and get to the bottom of NSBM. Is NSBM a bunch of Nazi rhetoric? Because that is what most people classically assume of the genre. NSBM, National Socialist Black Metal. It has quite the reputation, to say the least. And while it gets chalked up a lot of times to a minor little underground movement that not that many people give that much of a shit about, it exceeds that in many ways by some pretty large names being associated with that label, but also the increasing intrigue of the label, how it came about, if certain labels support that genre or not, as well as bigger names that are associated with it, and just general gray area with the definition. And this even extends past NSBM, because black metal is not the only metal genre that has been associated with that. There's a very popular death metal name that you might be familiar with, known as Argo Slent. And for lack of better terms, Argo Slent are one dick tip touch away from being NSBM, just minus the black metal part. But a lot of NS or NS adjacent bands have attracted big people to enjoy them that don't agree with the beliefs whatsoever, not the least of which are people like Count Blaggerith and people like Wyatt XM, two titans of this community and niche, Goliaths, that have went on the record disavowing everything that those bands are saying, but they always come back to the same thing: the high quality music. It's what they're looking for. Wyatt's at length talked about bands like Argo Slent. He has an entire collection of Reek of the Unzen Gas Fumes, which is an NS band from Japan, and Count Blaggerith has said many times that he doesn't care if something is NS or not, and he doesn't want to even talk about the politics. But some people take NS very seriously, and anything that is even remotely coming close to that, they don't want anything to do with it. A big example of this would be Anthony Fantano, who in the past reviewed both Peste Noire as well as Decibel Omega, and then proceeded to completely remove any association by taking down his reviews of those albums off of his channel entirely once the NS allegations got around, and once a bunch of his fans pretty much ran to him triggered and said,
"You shouldn't be covering this or supporting this or giving a platform to this."
And the issue is, he enjoyed these projects. If I remember correctly, he gave the Decibel Omega album like an 8 or a 9. Now, separate from the fact that it showed that he didn't even do any research about the lyricism or where the band was coming from to begin with, I just have one simple fucking question in retort to that. Revisionarily, do the traits that made you enjoy that album to begin with just completely disappear solely because you realize or come to a revelation of the context of where that album came from? And most people would say that is a bit of a complex question to ask, but is it? It's interesting to see how our perspectives change when we get the revelation and the epiphany that something isn't what we thought it was to begin with, especially artistically. I mean, think about how many times a celebrity that you love comes out as a scumbag. Do you suddenly lose the love that you had for the previous material that you enjoyed from them? It might diminish, but it diminishes and it suffers from nothing of the media's own doing. It has absolutely nothing to do with the quality of the piece itself. It's more of this overarching meta sort of thing that boils down to more of our perspective and how we operate as human beings, as opposed to the literal quality of the art piece itself. Now, it might be a little easier to discredit something like a movie or a TV show that has a lot of other moving parts, but when it comes to music and someone is pouring their heart and soul into their art, that can become a little bit murkier. And I think it kind of shows our biases for when we have the context of something. Take Kanye West, for example. I know that's a pretty left field example, but going into things like Vultures, people had the expectation of the type of individual he was, and so they could choose to associate or not associate with that music because they know how he is stepping into it. A lot of times with NSBM bands, people don't really step into that knowing the type of person they're listening to outright. But what about the situations where you do know? That's where you get people like Wyatt and Count Blaggerith, who are obviously very chill dudes and don't agree with the politics whatsoever, which moves me on to the main point that you see a lot of times with NSBM discussion and why it tends to be pretty damn high quality. I will hold your guys' hands gently when I say this. Black metal was designed to be fucking hateful and spiteful, and that is the argument that you hear all of the fucking time. What goes against the status quo of elitism and the normal types of ilk of the world than literally being homophobic or racist or going against anyone that isn't white whatsoever? Black metal has always been a battleground for some of the harshest and most depraved misanthropic themes that you're gonna find in all of music. So it isn't hard to see why something that is fueled by so much rage and ire towards the world is obviously gonna come across being a lot more genuine than a lot of other black metal. Now don't misconstrue me, I'm not saying all black metal isn't genuine, a lot of it is, but I obviously think there is such a thing as aestheticism, as well as people trying to live up to the reputation of like the old school Norwegian bands, and so they just feel like wallpaper as opposed to literally backing up what they're doing. I think that's why a lot of people also connect with war metal, which a lot of NSBM overlaps with war metal. It's that sort of onslaught and relentlessness that people, you know, really fuck with. But you are not going to find someone more than me that goes against pretty much every principle that a lot of NS bands stand for, and even I can acknowledge the fact that I have heard so many incredible NSBM projects that are just objectively really fucking good black metal. And not even just black metal, like I said with Argos Lent, there is other stuff. And you look at projects like Grand Belial's Key, great black metal project. Or everyone's favorite piece of shit, and I feel like I gotta get on top of the mountaintop for this one, Burzum. Do you think Burzum invented NSBM? Yes or no? I don't know if my mic picked that up, but there are some cats fucking fighting. There are some feral bitches out there. I love living in the backwoods of West Virginia. And Burzum is probably the most crucial puzzle piece in this entire commentary when it comes to paganism being injected in the NSBM formula and why that is an important distinction. A lot of NSBM projects support paganism or are some form of neo-pagan themselves, and the reason this is important is not every single person that is an NSBM artist is automatically just a Nazi, and I know that's a very difficult pill to swallow, but bear with me. Which might seem a little bit contradicting, but if you look at a band like Reek of the Unzane Gas Fumes coming out of Japan, their whole shtick is that they hate Buddhism, they're anti-authoritarian in their own way, but then the rabbit hole goes a little bit deeper, because let's dive a little bit into heathenry as well as the philosophy of Varg from Burzum. Heathenry is a difficult to describe thing because at face value, neo-paganism, or specifically the form of Germanic neo-paganism, is a movement that goes against a lot of other organized religions, specifically Christianity. But a lot of the black metal musicians that adopt these pagan beliefs, not the least of which was Varg from Burzum, or he was Burzum, is Burzum. The thing that you have to take into account is neo-Nazism was very much connected to heathenry and many ways, both from a secular point of view, but also a spiritually occult point of view. Without going on a big-ass hour-long rant about history, Nazism was very infatuated with occultism, but they were also fascinated with European white nationalism, which was being lumped in with paganism. And it's a very unfortunate thing, because I'm coming from a position of someone that has a lot of Celtic roots and Scottish roots in me, and when it comes to paganism, I not only have a lot of fond respect for it, but even feel connected to a lot of its general beliefs and worldview. But with that being said, much like anything else, much like people take Christianity and go do terrible things in the name of God, that form of neo-paganism was used in Nazi Germany to sort of back up beliefs, and a lot of the practicing officers and people that were high ups, not just nobodies, believed in that sort of thing. And so you kind of see this overlap start to develop with people like Varg, who developed developed a white nationalist gang pretty much in prison, and he has since said that he disavows that he doesn't believe in that, but I do think that he still very clearly has a lot of those beliefs. I'm not just outright calling him a Nazi, I'm just outright saying that he very clearly has some thoughts about cultural heritage and protection of cultural heritage, and how he views things like immigration, how he views things like people of a different skin color, and I ain't touching that with a 10-mile long pole, so you can agree or disagree on your own merit. And a quote from the historian Matthias Gardell I think is very ripely put here: "It is a logical extension of the political and spiritual dissidence inherent in black metal." And yeah, that's absolutely true. At the end of the day, this form of black metal is not so far removed or surprising when you look at the context of it. But there are a lot of different things at play other than people just being racist. Now, are there projects that you can chalk up to that? Are there projects that are just full of hatred innately, and that is the only thing that their entire branding is on, and they wear it on their sleeve like a damn swastika? Yeah, absolutely. You can cast those bands down, but there is a lot more gray area when you look at some of these bands that have different religious beliefs, different spiritual beliefs, different cultural beliefs, come from a different time period, come from a specific geographic location that backs up their beliefs in a way that certain other places in Western civilization would not personally know or agree with. If you're looking at some of the Eastern NS bands, or some of the Germanic pagan, neo-pagan bands that came out of Europe in that sort of Norwegian area, that a lot of people from America would not have any point of reference or base understanding of, because they don't know the research, they don't know where these people are coming from. And are the things they're doing evil? Absolutely. Are the things that they are doing detestable? Absolutely. But with any sort of accuracy when it comes to research and trying to understand the philosophy of other people, it's not easy enough to just write something off entirely and say only bad people listen to that, because that is truly not the case. And throughout the years of seeing very well-established, well-respected people that don't agree with the beliefs whatsoever adopting this music, platforming this music, it's no longer just a pebble in the ocean in terms of black metal. It is very much a well-established thing with a lot of bands that are bigger than you might think. And the farther you go down the rabbit hole, there are just more and more stories of bands and names that have so much controversy and polarization around them, and really make people think about the things that they are listening to. A great example of that is the project Goatmoon, which doesn't even hide the fact that it's an NSBM project. But then you see statements like this from Ritual Butcher of the band Archgoat, and you can pause this and read the entire thing if you'd like, but pretty much it hits the nail on the head in terms of why NSBM is such a stupid thing for its ideology. You are free to believe whatever you want, and that is what black metal is: unbridled free expression. That has always been the root of black metal from the get-go. It was always outcast culture for outcasts, and that isolated sort of feeling only had a logical step in the direction of pushing it to the absolute extreme limits of anti-societal beliefs. And regardless of how you feel about it, when it comes to abrasiveness, when it comes to rage and harshness, when your worldview enables you to feel so fiery towards the nature of the world and the things that you see wrong with it, when you proceed to filter that through a genre that is already very well known for how brittle it is and how angry it is and aggressive it is, it's not hard to see how that can be a proactive way to take your message and your narrative and put it into music that fuels that fire inside of you even more. And I think that's how NSBM comes out the other side, not only being so enjoyable for so many people, but makes people sort of take a lot internally to think about the philosophy of the bands that they listen to. And it is more complex and nuanced than people give it credit for. It doesn't just boil down to people believing the same thing, because not all NS is made equal, and not all NSBM is just NS by itself. Sometimes it's just the N, sometimes it's just the S, sometimes it's a combination, and sometimes the reason that it's fueled in the first place is much different than whatever preconceived notions you might have stepping into it. Which is why it's very important, if meaning and if lyricism and if messaging means something to you, which obviously a lot of people can separate the art from the artist, which is perfectly fine, and I think very necessary when it comes to this type of music, although you're not obligated to, or it's not necessary. It's very important to kind of know where the bands that you frequent are coming from. What is their message? What do they stand for? What do these people believe? And regardless of if you agree with it or not, it is good to have a sort of baseline understanding of the type of stuff that you're intaking, because it can influence you in the long run. And if it doesn't influence you, you obviously are listening to something anything that backs a certain ideology that can be spiteful and can be hateful and damaging to a lot of people on the outside looking in. So those are things to take into account. But that's why NSBM is so damn alluring to so many people. That's why the music tends to be very high quality and very good from both a production standpoint, but just a general vibe of it all. It's confrontational, it is in your face, it doesn't make any qualms about that, it absolutely knows its lane, and it stays in it, and it makes no apologies for being as relentless as it is, both in the fury that is brought from its ferocious lyricism, but overall the way that the genre is constructed in the first place. It is hateful through and through. It's gonna be your own personal little journey, and the only thing that I can add to this to end this all out is do your own research, try to understand the things that you're listening to, be open-minded, understand why someone might be enjoying that or why they would want to listen to that, and what their reasons might be, as well as the historical accuracy of why some of these NS bands started in the first place, what they believe, and understand that it isn't all the same thing, regardless of how it kind of gets lumped under the same banner in the end, under the same umbrella term in a way. But thank you guys so much for watching this video. I wish you guys a happy new year. As of the upload of this video, it should be the new year. I appreciate the support. Be sure to like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to join the review family today, and smash that notification bell to be notified of my future uploads. Let me know down in the comment section below your thoughts of it. I can't wait to hear it. Agree or disagree, there is no wrong answer. But until next time, you know who it is. My name is Jay Morris, and I'm signing off saying farewell.